Hi everyone, it's another tactics episode for the 2 Plus podcast where I'm sort of responding to a commenter's request this week. So, for a while now, we've been threatening to make videos of the things that you put in the comments or bring to our attention in Discord or through other means, look at ways that parts of the game that maybe you're struggling with and that may have come up in the games we play. As Paddy and I talk about a lot, we like to have examples from the games we play. I think Theory Hammer is a huge part of playing Warhammer, but at the same time, for us, it is about playing the game and the fact that in playing it, you often find out more about how particular rules in what is a very complex game have interactions that can be simpler than you think or more immersive than you think and can enhance your enjoyment of the game. Today is probably not one of those examples. So, overall, the skirmisher rules are a problem, and I want to look at how units that are close order or open order charging skirmishers are at somewhat of a disadvantage and just work through some of the technical details in my long running campaign to sort of push for skirmish to be pushed out of the game. So, in many ways, to me, what differentiates a rank and flank game from a squadron game, I've played a lot of games in my life, is that there are units of multiple models working together in a block rather than individual models who maybe are taking over a building or doing something on a smaller scale. Rank and flank is at a larger scale, and I believe the aesthetic of Warhammer fits that as well, where what people expect when they come to play a game of Warhammer are armies, not small units of men fight running around the board. Now, that might be at odds with how Games Workshop wants to make money. I believe that when Warhammer Fantasy was falling out of favor, that it was probably because of the scale of the game and that adding more and more units wasn't necessarily something that helped the game. And then also underneath that, they probably really just weren't selling models. So at the time, other games like War Machine and Hordes or Infinity have taken up the slack in that space, and Age of Sigmar, which I'm aware of to some extent, seems to have followed that path of being a smaller squad-based game, so to speak, where models can zip around the board and the circular bases give them 360 actions. I don't think this helps in Warhammer for lots of reasons. I think it slows the game down, which is the worst thing, to be fair. And on top of that, it creates a lot of rules exceptions that disadvantage these big blocks of units that are the things that people want to see on the table. Otherwise, they'll play those games. So before we get to it, I'm going to thank our major sponsor again, Jeff from Pandemwargaming. I am filming this at a different location, so I can't show you some of the terrain and bases and other accessories he's made for me. I've got another order coming in the next week. Can't say enough of what Jeff provides. Please follow the link below in the description to check out his stuff. His resin printing is of incredibly high quality. And also just continued shout out to our financial sponsors. If you are in the Sydney area, we do give you preferential treatment. We've been able to pick up a number of, we're putting on an event soon where a lot of these members are coming. If I don't think Dan or Nathan, we know, drop us a line privately through contacttwoplus at gmail.com and we'll get in touch. If you are nearby, there are perks for being members that we're starting to roll out. It's just right now, most of our members are local to us. So thanks, guys. We know who you are. We appreciate it greatly. So to get back to it, there's been a number of requests for videos explaining how skirmishes work, how chariot runners might work, skirmishes versus skirmishes, and while you can go through the rules and get the gist there, you probably need to see concrete examples. I'm a teacher by trade, and that's how things work. When you are trying to get someone to learn something, you need to provide examples that they can touch, feel, sense, not just other theory replacing theory. So in this example, from the upcoming battle report, where Paddy's Nomadic War plays my demons of chaos, renegade demons, as you know, we're big fans of. His, I moved my flamers up, and to be honest, I wasn't thinking I was going to get charged. I moved my flamers with Exalted Flamer in the middle into this wood, feeling like they are out of the arc of the, or out of being charged by these ball boys. I probably should have measured it. I didn't, and I thought with the low dice it was going to be a big effort for him to get there. On his turn, Paddy declares a charge with those ball boys into my skirmishing flamer unit. He has to roll the low die. I think he needed a 4 up to get in, and he got it, which is my fault for providing him the opportunity. So the interesting thing then was he rolled quite high. I think he needed a 4. He rolled a 6. That meant that when he wheeled, was he able to use more wheel to get the type of wheel that he wanted? And we went back to the charge rules that while it is in order, state that you get the wheel to maximize the amount of models that you want to bring into combat, and then you have to take the shortest possible distance towards that unit. In this case, my argument was, well, the shortest possible distance is this leftmost model here on that once he wheels to be able to get into a straight line, he then has to go straight at that model. Paddy's argument was he could continue to wheel past this objective marker here so that he could perhaps hit one of the other models in the unit, which would then bring more of his models into base-to-base contact, or probably, which actually it won't, but what preferentially create an overrun path where he could then continue on to the Juggernauts, or the Blood Crushers, sorry, I keep calling them by their old name. So, as you can see on the top right, here's a bit more of a close-up angle if you're looking for that lineup, and he's rolled a 6 on the wheel, and then he's going to come forward. So what the rule is, we didn't agree at night, brothers, I know, and left it where he got in. I didn't think it was going to make too much of a difference, and I think graciously Paddy let me have my way. But it turned out where our local group, which are pretty good at ironing out these rules, came down on my side. And the issue here is that if he wants to wheel, a single skirmishers are single model units, or there's only a single model, so you're only maximizing against one model. When you bring an open order or close order model into contact with another open order or close order unit, you've got this series of models in the front, the fighting rank that you need to maximize together. The reality is there is no fighting rank of a skirmish unit. They have no ranks, so you can only maximize against one model, which means that it's got to be the first model because you're only ever maximizing against one model. I know it's circuitous. The charge rules you can find, I didn't screenshot them to not take away from the images here, go through what a charge must entail, and there are 4 steps. They don't say explicitly that these must happen in order, but the presumption is they do. And in this instance, it meant that he couldn't make more of a wheel to come further across and have the set point, say, at my Exalted Flamer rather than this leftmost model. He had to take the shortest route, and he could only maximize against a single model. So where this goes is right here. That model on the left is the set point, but then I have to bring my skirmishing unit, as long as they have the movement to do so, into the front rank to maximize. So I did have to leapfrog or come around the back of this unit to form a fighting rank with the skirmishers, and I think the rulebook is pretty good with this. It makes it clear, and that leaves that the touch point was here. I have to maximize to him, but I'm aligning to what the unit that's come in with. There's not this closing the door that happens in the other unit, so to speak. So it's a little bit confusing, but in the end, the result was good for Paddy, and he swiped out my unit, was able to overrun and come forward. And then the next unit, we also were able to look up, which isn't obvious in the rules, that if you overrun and you can't, because I can't remember if he was frenzied or he had to go forward and overrun through, but could he then reform at the end? And he could. So that's in the FAQ, one of the first FAQs to Old World 1.0. So something that we worked out because I used to play the Carnosaur quite badly. So when you're a frenzied unit, you have to pursue. In this case, while he wasn't frenzied, he failed his role to restrain and reform. He overran, which I think he chose to do anyway because there's some impassable terrain to the left, which would have made maneuvering for him difficult. And because they were wiped out, he got to restrain and reform as if he was catching the curves, which is the way the rules suggest it happens. So I think the rulebook in this context is a little bit easier to understand. The whole concept of closing the door is a little bit different, and how you align open order units to skirmishers is is like that, where the set point is created and then the skirmishers have to rank up. Controlling overrun paths is critical to being a successful player, especially if you're running an aggressive army. I would say, and we're going to put this to an audience soon, that the number one skill for a combat army is setting up ways to stay in combat repeatedly through overruns and restraining and reforming. And I think in this instance, it showed that the skirmishers actually had a pretty big advantage. If this had been a small unit, of course, Paddy doesn't have to charge, but this unit really needs to get into combat as often as possible. But the fact that I can say leave a model out who's now closest means that defender can dictate the path to an extent, and that means that for a much smaller cost, you can do things like redirect Death Stars like this, or pseudo Death Stars like this around the board. I want to get to how even much gamier this gets with skirmishers charging skirmishers, where I had a lot of experience playing Sisters of Avalon against Peg Knights. I'll probably bring that video in the next month or so, but you can see that I don't really think this is how Warhammer should work. I think the advantage should go to the attacker. I think that big unit of boar boys is much more what Warhammer is about, and this small unit of skirmishers is a little bit gamier and probably belongs in different systems. But in the end, great result for Paddy. Wiped the unit out on the first turn. Probably my mistake, and I got what I deserved. So thanks again, guys. Please in the comments. Sometimes I may not get this explanation as clear as possible. We've benefited a lot recently from replies. If they're well intentioned, I think we can get to, through community, the best possible interpretation of some of these rules and be able to feed that on to new players to make them as simple as possible.